Today, we are talking about a very important book called Empire by Michael Hardt and Antonio Negri. The authors make a bold claim. They say a new form of global power has appeared. They call this new power empire. Do not confuse empire with imperialism. Imperialism was the old system. In that system, powerful nations like Britain and France controlled other lands. They set up colonies, they drew lines on a map, they said, "This red land belongs to Britain, this blue land belongs to France." Empire is different. Empire has no single center of power. It has no fixed boundaries. It does not work by drawing lines on a map. Instead, it works through networks. It is decentered. It is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Think of the internet. Internet has no capital city. No one sits in one room and controls everything. Power spreads out through connections. Empire works like that. It is a global apparatus of rule. Empire also has no temporal boundaries. It presents itself as eternal. It says, "This is how things have always been. This is how they will always be." It tries to suspend history. It claims to be at the end of history. Empire rules over all of social life. It does not just control territory, it controls how we think, feel, communicate, and produce. It rules over human nature itself. This is what the authors call biopower. To understand empire, we must first look at the old system of international law. This system came from the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. It was based on the sovereignty of nation states. Each state was supreme within its own boundaries. States made treaties with each other. International law was just a set of contracts between them. This system is now in crisis. It has always been in crisis. That crisis is what pushed us toward empire. Think about the United Nations. The UN was supposed to be the peak of this old system. It respected the sovereignty of each member state, but the UN also pointed towards something new. It was a supranational body. It had power above individual states. The legal thinker Kelsen saw this early. He wanted a world state. He wanted a global legal order above all nations. His idea was utopian, but it pointed in the right direction. Now look at how the UN works today. It is not really a world government. It is also not just a collection of separate states. It's something in between. That in between is the space where empire grows. Many people try to understand the new world order, but they use old models. They try to fit new reality into old boxes. One group uses Hobbesian model. Hobbes said, "People are naturally violent. To survive, they give up their freedom to a strong ruler. This ruler is like a god on earth." So Hobbesians say we need a global Leviathan. We need one strong superpower to keep the peace. This superpower would be like a global police force. Another group uses Lockean model. Locke was more optimistic. He thought people could cooperate. He believed in checks and balances. So Lockeans say we need a global civil society. We need networks of NGOs and international organizations. They think this will create a peaceful world democracy. Both models are wrong. They both repeat the old idea of the nation state. They just scale it up. Hobbesians want one global state. Lockeans want many states in a global constitution. But empire is not a scaled up nation state, it is something completely new. So, how does empire actually work? First, empire is a system, it is not chaos. It has a structure. That structure is flexible and dynamic. It works horizontally through networks. All actors are swept into one global order. There is no outside. Second, empire is a hierarchy. Even though it is a network, some nodes are more powerful than others. The United States is a privileged node, but the US is not the center of empire like Rome was the center of the Roman Empire. The US is not an imperialist power. Its privilege comes from its own constitution. The US Constitution was designed for extensive empire. Jefferson and the Federalists were inspired by ancient Rome. They wanted open frontiers. They wanted power distributed in networks. That imperial idea has now gone global. Third, empire works through exception. Most of the time, things run smoothly. But when there is a crisis, someone must act. That someone is the imperial power. It decides what counts as an emergency. It decides when to intervene. This is like a state of permanent exception. Fourth, empire works through police power. It is not about war between nations. It is about police actions inside a single global space. The Gulf War in 1991 was a model. It was presented as a just war. It was a police action against an enemy of world order. The enemy was not another empire, it was a rogue state. This brings us to the idea of just war. This is an old concept. It comes from Christian theology. A war is just if it defends the innocent or punishes evil. Modern thinkers tried to get rid of this idea. They thought war was just a matter of national interest. But just war theory has returned, and it has returned in a new form. Today, just war is not about defense, it is not about survival, it is justified in itself. The enemy is not another state, the enemy is an absolute threat to the ethical order. The enemy is a terrorist, the enemy is a drug lord, the enemy is an ethnic cleanser. This is dangerous. It makes war banal. It turns war into routine police repression. At the same time, it makes war absolute. It turns the enemy into pure evil. Both effects serve empire. Empire needs a constant state of low intensity conflict to justify its police actions. Now we need to go deeper. We need to understand how empire really works in our daily lives. For this, Hardt and Negri turned to Michel Foucault. Foucault described two kinds of society. First, there was disciplinary society. This was the society of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Power worked through big institutions. There were prisons, factories, asylums, schools, and barracks. Each institution had walls. Inside those walls, power shaped your body and your mind. You learned to be a worker. You learned to be a student. You learned to be a soldier. Discipline was external, it came from the institution. But disciplinary society is breaking down. The walls are crumbling. In its place comes the society of control. In this society, power is not in institutions, it is everywhere. It is inside your brain, it is inside your body. You do not need a boss to tell you to work. You tell yourself. You do not need a God to watch you. You watch yourself. Power becomes democratic. We all participate in our own domination. Think about your smartphone. It does not force you to check it. You check it because you want to. That is control. Think about social media. You produce content for free. You perform your life for an audience. That is control. The boundaries between work and life, public and private, inside and outside, all break down. This is biopower. Biopower is power over life itself. It does not just control your actions, it produces your desires, your identity, your very sense of self. Biopower makes you want what the system wants. It makes you be what the system needs. Here is the key point. In empire, production and life have merged. We no longer just produce things, we produce social life itself. Hardt and Negri call this biopolitical production. It has three forms. First, there is industrial production that has been computerized. Factories are now networks. Workers communicate through information. manufacturing becomes a service. Second, there is symbolic and analytical work. This is the work of programmers, designers, consultants, and managers. They solve problems, they manipulate symbols, they create knowledge. Third and most important, there is affective labor. This is the production of feelings, relationships, and communities. It is a work of nurses, therapists, teachers, childcare workers, and entertainers. It is also the work we do for free when we care for our families and friends. Affective labor produces social networks. It produces biopower itself. These three types of labor are increasingly immaterial. They produce ideas, relationships, and affects instead of physical objects, and they are deeply cooperative. Immaterial labor requires communication and collaboration. You cannot produce a feeling alone. You cannot produce knowledge alone. You need others. This cooperation is not imposed by the boss. It is built into the work itself. That is a revolutionary fact. It means that labor has its own power. It does not need capital to organize it. The multitude can cooperate on its own. To understand empire, we need to go back to the origins of modern sovereignty. That story begins with the revolution. Between 1200 and 1600, European thinkers discovered the plane of immanence. They said that power is not in heaven, it is on earth. Humans are masters of their own lives. We make our own cities, our own history, our own values. This was a revolutionary idea. It broke with medieval transcendence. Thinkers like Duns Scotus and Spinoza celebrated singularity and difference. They said every being has its own unique essence. No god stands above. No king rules by divine right. The multitude has the power to create its own world. But this revolution created a war. The forces of order fought back. They could not return to the old world, so they built a new kind of transcendence. This is the second mode of modernity. It is a counter revolution. Philosophers like Descartes and Kant created a transcendental apparatus. They said that human freedom is real, but it must be mediated. You cannot experience the world directly. You must go through the categories of your mind. You cannot act directly. You must follow the moral law. This was a way to control the multitude. It put a filter between desire and action. Hobbes did this in politics. He said humans are in a state of war. To survive, we must give up our power to a sovereign. The sovereign stands above us. He is a god on earth. This is modern sovereignty. It is transcendent, it is separate from society, and it rules from above. The nation state was supposed to solve the crisis of modernity. It would create a unified identity. It would turn the chaotic multitude into a single people. But the nation is a myth. It is an imagined community. It hides differences. It claims to be natural and eternal, but it is not. The people is not the same as the multitude. The multitude is multiple, singular, open, and creative. The people is one, homogeneous, closed, and fixed. The people is the multitude put in a straitjacket. The nation state needs the people. It cannot rule the multitude directly. So, it fabricates a people. How does it fabricate a people? Through two operations. First, racism. The nation defines itself against racial others. The white European needs the black African as a negative foundation. Without the savage, there is no civilized man. This is the dialectic of colonialism. Second, representation. One class stands for the whole. The bourgeoisie says it represents the nation. The party says it represents the people. But representation always alienates power. It takes it away from the multitude and gives it to a small group. Colonialism was not an accident. It was essential to modern sovereignty. Europe needed an outside. It needed non-capitalist spaces to exploit. It needed racial others to define itself against. The colony was the outside. Inside Europe, there was order, reason, and freedom. Outside in the colonies, there was chaos, emotion, and slavery. The two were dialectically linked. You could not have one without the other. But colonialism also created resistance. The enslaved revolted. Toussaint Louverture led the Haitian Revolution. He took the French ideals of liberty and equality seriously. He demanded they apply to everyone. The French were horrified. Their universalism was only for Europeans. This is a contradiction of modern sovereignty. It claims to be universal, but it is based on exclusion. It claims to be for all humanity, but it only works for white European men. Colonial violence always comes home. The methods used on the colonized are eventually used on the colonizers. Racism, torture, and police power boomerang back to the metropole. Think about it. The techniques of colonial control were refined in Algeria and India. Then they were used in Paris and London. The concentration camp was invented in the colonies. Then it was used in Europe. Fanon understood this. He said, decolonization is always violent. The colonized must use counter-violence to break the colonial spell. This is not a dialectical synthesis, it is just a direct clash of forces. It opens a space for something new. But what comes after colonialism? Often it is the nation state. The colonized win their independence, they get their own flag and their own army. They join the United Nations, they become a sovereign nation like any other. This is a poisoned gift. The post-colonial state is still trapped in the global hierarchy of capital. It is still subordinate to the world market. It still represses its own multitude. National liberation is not true liberation, it is just a new cage. Today, we are in a passage. We are moving from modern sovereignty to empire. We can see the symptoms. Postmodernist and post-colonial theories are symptoms. They attack binary divisions. They celebrate hybridity and difference. They think this is a radical politics. But empire also celebrates hybridity and difference. Empire loves fluid identities. Empire thrives on flexible hierarchies. So these theories do not challenge empire. They dance to its tune. Fundamentalism is also a symptom. It seems anti-modern. It looks like a return to tradition, but it is actually postmodern. It is a refusal of Western modernization. It is a response to the losers of globalization. The winners get postmodern hybridity, the losers get fundamentalist purity. The ideology of the world market is postmodern too. It celebrates circulation, mobility, and diversity. It attacks fixed boundaries. It says the nation state is obsolete. This is exactly what empire says too. So where is empire? It is nowhere and it is everywhere. There is no outside. There is no place to stand that is not already inside empire. The old critical strategy of finding an external standpoint no longer works. This has huge implications. The modern public sphere is gone. There are no more squares where citizens gather to debate. We have malls, freeways, and gated communities. We have the spectacle. We watch television alone. We scroll through social media alone. We are isolated and connected at the same time. The modern institutions are in crisis. The family, the school, the factory, the prison, their walls are breaking down. But the logics of those institutions spread everywhere. You are always in school, you are always at work, you are always in prison. Subjectivity is produced in a continuous fluid process. There is no more outside, so we must fight from within. Hardt and Negri use a metaphor. Empire is like an eagle with two heads, but the two heads are turned inward. They attack each other. One head is the juridical and political machine of command. It tries to create order, it tries to impose peace, but it always fails. It is always in crisis. The other head is the multitude. The multitude is the creative, productive force of globalization. It is the real power. Empire is just a parasite. It lives off the lifeblood of the multitude. It is an empty machine. It is a spectacular machine. It is a vampire. The conflict between these two heads is the real drama of our time. Empire tries to capture the power of the multitude. The multitude tries to escape. In the next lecture, we will go down into the hidden abode of production. We will see where the power of the multitude really comes from. And we will ask, how can we build a counter empire?